Two brothers turned 50 in the same year. Same parents, same house growing up, same neighborhood, same middle-class lessons. Work hard, buy a home, take care of your family. Do not fall behind. At 50, Brian and Andrew looked almost identical on paper. Brian earned about $165,000 a year. Andrew earned about $165,000 a year. Both were married. Both had two older kids. Both owned homes in the suburbs. Both had steady careers. Both had around $260,000 saved for retirement. But at 67, their lives were completely different. Brian had about $430,000 invested, a mortgage he's still worried about, one car payment, a thin cash reserve, and a retirement plan that only worked if he kept working longer than he wanted. Andrew had about $1.32 million invested, no car payments, a lower monthly floor, and enough flexibility to leave full-time work without panic. Same family, same income, same starting point. So what created a difference of almost $900,000? Not luck, not inheritance, not a genius stock pick. It was what each brother protected during his 50s. Brian protected the lifestyle. Andrew protected the margin. And that difference quietly decided everything. Your 50s are dangerous because they do not look dangerous. Many men earn more than ever, own more than ever, and look more successful than ever. But under the surface, the life they built may have become too expensive to escape. That is the trap, not being broke, looking fine while every month gets harder. When Brian turned 50, he felt like he had finally earned the right to enjoy life. His 30s had been tight. His 40s had been busy. Kids, mortgage, promotions, bills, repairs, stress. So when his income climbed, his first thought was simple. I worked 30 years for this. Shouldn't life finally feel better? That sounds reasonable. That is why it works. The house came first. Brian's house was not falling apart, but it felt dated. The kitchen looked old, the bathrooms needed work, the deck needed repairs. His wife wanted the house to feel like the life they had built. The project started at $55,000 and ended near $95,000. Some came from savings. Some came from a home equity line. Brian told himself it was okay, because the house was an asset. But a house can be both an asset and an anchor. Andrew's house needed work too. He fixed the roof, replaced one bathroom, and left the kitchen alone. Not because he did not want a better kitchen. He did. But Andrew had a rule after 50. He did not ask only, can I afford this? He asked, will this make retirement harder to reach? That one question changed the decade. Then came the car. Brian's old SUV needed repairs. Nothing dramatic, just annoying. But in his neighborhood, surrounded by newer vehicles, the old one started to feel embarrassing. At the dealership, the payment was $820 a month. The salesman said, with your income, this is very comfortable. Comfortable payment. How many comfortable payments does it take to make a man trapped? Brian signed. The SUV made sense in the moment. Reliable, safe, nice to drive. He deserved it. But $820 a month from 52 to 67 is almost $148,000 before insurance and repairs. Invested instead, at 7%, it could become around $260,000. That was not just a car. That was a piece of Brian's future parked in the driveway. Andrew bought a 5-year-old Toyota with cash. Brian laughed and said, you could have bought something better. Andrew said, I am not trying to impress people at red lights. At the time, Brian thought that was boring. 15 years later, it sounded different. The real difference between the brothers was not the remodel or the SUV. It was their monthly floor. Your monthly floor is what your life costs before you make one flexible decision. Mortgage, cars, insurance, property taxes, debt payments, subscriptions, family support, minimum obligations, the amount your life demands just to stay still. At 53, Brian's monthly floor was about $10,400. After taxes, health insurance, retirement contributions, and payroll deductions, He brought home roughly $10,100 a month. Before groceries, gas, restaurants, repairs, gifts, or emergencies, Brian was already behind. He was not poor. He was overcommitted. Andrew's monthly floor was about $6,100. Same income, same general life. But every month, Andrew had room. Room became savings. Savings became investments. Investments became choices. Brian's income rose. Andrew's freedom rose. Those are not the same thing. Then the 50s started sending bills nobody had planned for. The first bill was adult children. Brian's daughter graduated from college and moved to a city with expensive rent. She needed help with the deposit, then rent, then a car repair, then one credit card balance that had just gotten out of control. Brian said yes because he loved her. That is what makes this decade dangerous. The expensive decisions do not always feel selfish. Sometimes they feel loving. Andrew helped his son too, but he put a fence around the help. "We will help you launch," he said, "but we cannot become your backup paycheck forever." His son was frustrated. Andrew felt guilty, but guilt does not compound. Money does. The second bill was aging parents. Brian's mother started needing help. Prescriptions, repairs, a few $100s here and there. Then she fell, and suddenly the family was talking about assisted living, home care, and who would cover the gap. Brian had no plan for that gap, so the money came from current income, credit, and retirement contributions that were quietly reduced. Andrew faced a similar problem, but 2 years earlier he had forced an uncomfortable family meeting with his siblings. They discussed documents, insurance, realistic costs, and limits. Nobody enjoyed that conversation, but it was cheaper than pretending. By 56, Brian looked more successful than Andrew from the outside. Better house, better car, better vacations, better photos. But Andrew had something Brian could not see: a lower burn rate. Invisible wealth is hard to admire. Nobody compliments your paid-off car. Nobody claps for your emergency fund. Nobody sees the upgrade you skipped or the house project you refused to finance. But invisible wealth is what lets you breathe when life turns. And life turned at 58. Brian's company announced layoffs. He survived the first round, then the second. But something changed inside him. He no longer asked whether the job was good for him. He asked what a high monthly floor does. It turns a paycheck into oxygen. Andrew's company had layoffs too. He was nervous, but not trapped. He had cash, low fixed costs, and taxable investments. If the job disappeared, it would hurt. It would not break him. Same economy, different structure. Around the same time, both brothers looked at retirement projections. Brian looked at the smooth version: work until 67, average returns, normal spending, no big surprises. The chart said he could probably be okay, but probably was carrying a lot. No layoff, no long market drop, no parent care shock, no forced early retirement, no big lifestyle cut before it was too late. Andrew ran the uglier version. What if the market fell 30% right before retirement? What if he had to stop working at 62? What if he needed 2 years of cash before touching investments? The numbers were uncomfortable, but uncomfortable numbers are useful numbers. Andrew needed his plan to survive a bad year. Brian needed everything to go mostly right. Then the market dropped. Not forever, not the end of capitalism, just a normal, painful decline at the worst possible time. Brian opened his retirement account at night and felt his stomach tighten. His portfolio was down. His bonus was uncertain. His mother needed more help. The SUV still had payments. The home equity line was not gone. His daughter needed help again. Nothing was dramatic enough to look like disaster by itself. Together, it was heavy. Brian said, "Maybe I just need to work until 70. Andrew's portfolio dropped too. He hated seeing the number fall. But he had cash. He had lower expenses in the middle of the drop. He did not need to turn a temporary market decline into a permanent wound. Same market, different pressure. By 62, the emotional difference was obvious. Brian was still earning strong money, but every paycheck already had a job before it arrived. He wanted to slow down, but his life did not allow it. He wanted to help his wife, his kids, his mother, and himself. But there was not enough margin for everyone. One night, he opened his banking app before bed. The checking balance was under $900. Payday was 6 days away. The mortgage had cleared, the SUV payment was coming, the credit card was due Friday, his mother's care bill had gone up again. He stared at the screen and thought, how am I making more money than ever and still this close to the edge? That is the 50s trap. Not failure. Compression. A good income pressed under too many reasonable obligations. Andrew had stress too. He was not living in a fantasy. But his life had margin, and margin changes how problems feel. A $2,000 surprise bill is a crisis when you have no room. It is annoying when you have margin. At 67, the results were clear. Brian had about $430,000 invested. That is not nothing. But his expenses were still too high. His retirement income covered only part of the life he was used to. He could retire only by downsizing, delaying Social Security, cutting sharply, or working part-time because he had to. Andrew had about $1.32 million invested. A nearly paid-off house, no car payments, and a lower-cost lifestyle. He did not need to look rich. He needed to be free. The difference did not come from one brilliant move. It came from 5 anchors Brian kept and Andrew cut. Housing took the first chunk. Car payments took the second. Adult children took the third. Aging parents took the fourth. A high monthly floor took the fifth. And because Brian's fixed costs were high, he lost the one thing men in their 50s need most. Flexibility. At 50, Brian looked like the brother who had made it. At 67, Andrew had the thing Brian thought success was supposed to buy. The ability to stop. That is the lesson. Your 50s are not the decade to prove you are successful. They are the decade to make sure your success does not become a cage. Do not ask only, can I afford this payment? Ask, will this payment still let me walk away someday? Do not ask only, can I help my kids? Ask, can I help them without making them responsible for me later? Do not ask only, is my retirement number growing? Ask, would my plan survive if the bad years came first? Brian and Andrew started in the same house. One protected the image, the other protected the margin. And in your 50s, margin is not just extra money. Margin is the distance between the life you built and the life that traps you.